Welcome to Feedback Learnex. My name is Juan Carlos, and today we're going to visit the most remote places in the world. Some of these barely have anyone living there. Get ready to take note of the vocabulary and to practice your listening. Let's go! We start the list with Alejandro Selkirk Island in Chile. The official name of this small island located in the Juan Fernandez archipelago is due to the Scottish sailor whose lonely life on the island inspired Daniel Defoe's novel Robinson Crusoe. But even today, it is known by its other name, Más Afuera, which says much more about its inaccessibility. A boat only travels to Alejandro Selkirk a few times a year, with supplies for the fishermen and families who settle there for about 7 months to fish for lobster. On the island, there are 26 houses, and further away, a refuge of the National Forestry Corporation. Then we have Alert, Canada. Alert is a settlement just under 500 miles from the North Pole, and is considered to be the northernmost permanently inhabited human settlement on Earth. It only has 6 inhabitants who occupy a military base and a Canadian weather station. Its closest neighbors are 2,092 kilometers away. It is a fairly inhospitable place, covered with snow 10 out of 12 months of the year, and whose maximum temperature is reached in July, just over 3 degrees Celsius, which must be a delight compared to the 40 under zero that are usually reached in winter. Up next, we have Tepuy, Roraima in Venezuela. It's hard to get to this remote place, and it is that, more than kilometers, it seems you have to go back in time. It is the highest point of the tubular mountains found in the Great Savannah, shared by Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil. The trek to reach its top lasts 6 days and drives many of the hikers who dare to go on this adventure crazy. There is a place called Passage of Tears, extreme cold and heat, and the worst, the puri-puri, some terrible mosquitoes that get under your socks. This landscape inspired the novel The Lost World by Arthur Conan Doyle and the legendary Pixar movie Up. Then we have Tuvalu, former Ellis Islands. This is one of the most remote places in the world, and it is also one of the most beautiful. Tuvalu is an archipelago located to the east of the Solomon Islands and has an area of 26 square kilometers, scattered among small islands, coral reefs, and atolls. To imagine how remote it is enough to know which are the closest countries: Kiribati, Samoa, and Fiji. It is not only one of the most inaccessible countries, unfortunately, with a maximum height of 5 meters above sea level, it is also threatened by climate change. The catastrophe for this little paradise seems to be inevitable. We also have McGuire Island in Australia. Between New Zealand and Antarctica lies this tiny island, just a dot of land on the map, in the southwestern corner of the Pacific Ocean. It is perhaps the most inaccessible World Heritage Site of all. It received a mention in 1997 in recognition of its geological importance. The island is uninhabited. It is occupied only by the few scientists from the base located at the foot of the Wireless Hill, and of course also about 3.5 million birds, with a significant colony of penguins. Rapa Nui in Chile. Not only one of the most remote places on the planet, but also one of the most mysterious. It is true that tourism has made it easier to get to this small Polynesian island, but not for nothing was the island known as the navel of the world. It is a 7-hour flight from Santiago de Chile, and given its historical uniqueness, it is considered as special territory. The closest continental point to the island is more than 3,500 kilometers away. The Moai are its most important symbol, the fascinating cultural manifestation of an ancient culture and a today World Heritage Site. Up next, we have It Okwa Kwaor Tomit in Greenland. It's a mouthful, I know. If Greenland is no longer an easy destination, imagine being the most remote town in the country. It'Oquaquaortomit was founded in 1925 by a few settlers and can only be reached by helicopter and boat, and not every month of the year. There are about 500 people living there, including polar bears, whales, walruses, and polar foxes. Tristan da Cunha. This British archipelago is considered the most remote inhabited island in the world. It is 2,173 kilometers north of St. Helena, another island which in turn is 1,800 kilometers off the western coast of Angola. So apart from being remote, this place is one of the most inaccessible in the world. And what is here? Well, a single city called Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, where the 302 people who inhabit the island live. There are only 8 different surnames, and due to inbreeding, some genetic diseases such as glaucoma are very common. Up next, we have Svalbard in Norway. Halfway between Norway and the North Pole, we find this place that, despite its remoteness, has attracted many travelers for years. And it is not for less considering the extraordinary beauty of the landscapes of this archipelago, in which some 3,000 people live. The city sits on a permanently frozen ground, and more than half of its territory is glaciers. Svalbard is a certified sustainable destination, which is easy to get to as it has an international airport. Here, the only danger is the polar bears, the true kings of the place. A curious fact, it is the enclave of the World Seed Bank. Seeds of thousands of plants from around the world are kept in case they have to be used in the event of a global catastrophe. And finally, we have Cayo Chachahuate in Honduras. From Sambo Creek, some boats leave for Cayos Cochinos, the last Eden of the Caribbean. The Garifuna are considered to be the only ethnic group descendant from Africans that were never slaves. Since before becoming slaves, they were shipwrecked and ended up mixing with indigenous people from the Caribbean. Since then, they are the inhabitants of the seas. Cayos Cochinos is part of the Bay Islands of Honduras, but they do not receive as many travelers. There was a time when maps had blank spots, but that time has passed, and today there are no blank spaces on the maps. In fact, the maps have practically become one single map, that of Google Maps. Man, that was a trip. What do you think? Would you dare visit some of these remote places? Stay tuned for next week for the following episode of Feedback Learnex. My name is Juan Carlos, and I'll talk to you next week.